Welcome back. In today's teaching, I would like to open with a quick little tuning in practice. So please take a moment, and if you would like to close your eyes, you can, but it's not required. And this isn't necessarily a formal meditation practice, but just a moment to connect. So if you'd like to touch your heart, you can. Sometimes that's a bit of a more beautiful way to connect with your experience. And take a moment to just tune in to the heart center and remind yourself what a beautiful gift you've given to yourself to learn this practice. So you might consider offering yourself some gratitude here. You might take a moment and notice just how deep of a form of self-care and even self-love this is. Take a moment to connect with your intention. Why are you doing this? Why did you decide to come and learn this practice? When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, most of us don't come to this practice because life is going swimmingly. A lot of us come to this practice because life has gotten kind of hard, and there are some experiences that we need to learn how to navigate. And even if that is true for you, it is still out of deep care for yourself that you have come to this practice. So even if you're a person who has a lot of insecurities or is really kind of mean to themselves, you still are here because you care about yourself. And that's really cool. So please offer yourself a little bit of thanks for that. Now, another thing that I want to highlight before we get really into this is the importance of spiritual friends. Having spiritual friends is super important as we walk along this path. We can walk alone, surely, but that can create a lot of obstacles that are difficult to navigate, particularly without the support of a Sangha or spiritual community. Before Zoom meetings were commonplace, I became quite lost in my own confusion for a long time and a lot of doubt after I moved away from my home Sangha. So while it's possible to learn and practice on our own, there are really a lot of limitations to this. And this is one of the main reasons that I created this Sangha, so that we don't have to be alone. A lot of us don't even know where to begin. And if I'm being perfectly honest, there is a lot of information out there about mindfulness practice, about loving kindness and compassion, about Buddhism, and not all of it is good. So I'm really grateful that you are here and that I get to offer this to you and hopefully create a very nice feel in our community and so that we can all support one another in our practices. So if you haven't already attended one of the live gatherings, please do. The live gatherings are intended to help you expand your practice, expand your knowledge, and deepen your understanding of your experience. But more importantly, they're really there to help support you along the path. During each gathering, you will have the opportunity to seek clarity in any areas that you might have a little bit of confusion. You can also share your experiences, which is a great way to connect, and just simply connecting with other Sangha members. So during these sessions, I offer a live teaching followed by a group practice session. And at the end of each gathering, there is an opportunity for sharing experience and answering or asking questions. The topics that I will be teaching in the live gatherings include, but are not limited to, self-forgiveness, mindful communication, enhancing relationships, working with chronic pain, working with forgiveness, grief, how to practice in nature. And I will expand a bit more on principles of Buddhist psychology and how it all kind of fits into our modern age. Now, I'm not a Buddhist teacher, but I will incorporate a lot of themes from Buddhism. Now, I want to take a moment and highlight the important aspect or principle of interconnectedness. As human beings, we are completely dependent on one another for our survival. I mentioned this before, but one of my favorite discoveries in modern astrophysics is that the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our bones and in our teeth, and the iron in our blood, the carbon in our bodies were actually created in the centers of stars. And these atoms have existed for billions of years. And a lot of them were even present at the beginning of the universe. Yet they are in our bodies right now. So we're all made of stardust that's just been rearranged to make a human. One of the first teachers that I encountered before I became a Buddhist and started learning about meditation practices was a man called Eckhart Tolle, and he wrote a book called The Power of Now. That was one of the first books that really opened my eyes to what the present moment really is and what that means. So he writes, "You are not in the universe, you are the universe, an intrinsic part of it. Ultimately, you are not a person, but a focal point where the universe is becoming conscious of itself. What an amazing miracle." And he's right. I agree. This is an amazing miracle. So, thinking about interconnectedness for a minute, the fruit in your fridge has been handled by many people, from the person who planted the seed and the farmer who grew it to the person who picked it and washed it and cared for it and sent it to be sorted and then packaged it into a crate to be sent to the grocery store. The same goes for your clothing. It's made of cotton. Somebody had to grow that cotton. The cotton was picked and processed into fibers and made into fabric and textiles. And then there was another person who sewed the garment. And then shipping, of course. There are so many people that handle everything that we have ever touched. So, thinking about this, just how dependent upon one another we truly are, we also can recognize that we all are desperately in need to be loved. We are all seeking a deep sense of belonging in the world. And somehow we still fail to see this web of interconnectivity. We feel alone, but we don't realize that we aren't. All beings in this world, all beings, including insects and animals, have the wish to be free from suffering. So now, why do we practice loving kindness if it's not already apparent? In short, it is our most fundamental nature. It is what we are. It is who we are at our core. At our absolute most basic, we are nothing more than consciousness and love. And there might even be the argument that consciousness is love. So the practice is intended to foster understanding of your true nature and help cut through this delusion of separateness. Without love, true awakening just simply isn't possible. Because love is the foundation where one gains true wisdom. It is the ground or the foundation for forgiveness and acceptance. And not just within ourselves, but amongst other beings as well. If we're clouded with anger and resentments, then we will never make progress. And again, there is a deep sense of this need to be connected and to be loved. So it's our way of connecting with others. It is even the way that we connect with strangers is encompassed in this. I'm going to share a little quote with you. It says, "Beneath the surface of every calm demeanor lies a universe of unexpressed feelings, often overshadowed by the chaos of life. When we encounter someone who appears cold, we must remember that they may be guarding a fragile heart, weighed down by sorrow they cannot articulate. In extending compassion and patience, we offer a lifeline that can bridge the chasm of isolation, inviting them to share their story and find solace in our presence." That quote was by somebody named On Mark, and I'm actually not even sure who that is. I just saw the quote and thought it was beautiful. So loving kindness and compassion are two of the most important foundations in this practice of mindfulness. In fact, they are one of the most important aspects of all of Buddhism and several of the Eastern traditions. So, in my personal practice, it has been by far the most transformative of all of the practices. I practice it daily, both on and off the cushion. I want to invite you into my world for a minute here. So, as I mentioned previously, I used to be a raging alcoholic. I made a lot of mistakes and I hurt a lot of people while I was in active addiction. And like many addicts, when I got sober, my life was an absolute disaster, and I had to pick up the pieces. I was so angry with myself. I was full of regret. I was so ashamed and embarrassed for my behavior and some of the things that I did. And this practice of self-compassion helped me immensely. It helped me transform my relationship with the previous version of myself. And it helped me forgive myself and accept myself as I am, along with the mistakes that I made. Through this, I was able to let go of anger and guilt and shame by making space for it to be there, allowing it to be present and part of me so that I could offer loving kindness to the part of me that always needed it. I'm going to share another quote now by a nun, Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron. Before I share this quote, the term Maitri is the Pali word, which was the language of the Buddha. So Maitri is the same as metta. So Pema Chodron writes, but loving kindness, Maitri, toward ourselves doesn't mean getting rid of anything. Maitri means that we can still be crazy after all these years. We can still be angry after all these years. We can still be timid or jealous or full of feelings of unworthiness. The point is not to try to change ourselves. Meditation practice isn't about trying to throw ourselves away and become something better. It is about befriending who we are already. The ground of practice is you or me or whoever we are right now, just as we are. That is the ground. That is what we study. That is what we come to know with tremendous curiosity and interest. So I didn't have to get rid of anything. I had to learn how to befriend all of the beliefs that I had about myself. Underneath all of the mistakes that I made and shame that I had, there was just a wounded little girl who would do anything that she could at the time to run away and not feel. So I began to investigate and become curious about the suffering aspect of myself. And I started offering it this practice of loving kindness and compassion. And eventually I was able to release myself of this bondage of shame and regret, only because I was able to hold space for it and be there with it. When we tend to ourselves from our most awake heart, then these well springs of wisdom and insights have the opportunity to surface. Metta is the practice of loving kindness, or loving friendliness, sometimes it's called, and compassion. I'm going to make an important distinction between empathy and compassion really quick. So, empathy is feeling the emotions of others and doing our best to understand their perspective. Compassion includes empathy, but in addition to empathy, it also includes mindfulness. So we are able to be with and observe the experience without being completely enmeshed in it. So when we practice compassion, the first aspect is to have empathy, then to become curious about it by using mindfulness. And the third component is to have the wish to do something about it, or the wish to free this person from their suffering. So we can hold space for ourselves and others with the wish for them to be happy and experience peace and joy. We can offer compassion without really needing to fix anything. This is the offering of well wishes in a way. Really, the basic purpose of this practice is to learn how to become your own best friend, allowing all of these little messy parts to be with you, and recognizing that we are all fallible humans. We're all going to make mistakes. And we all have traits and habits that we don't necessarily love. This practice makes space for all of the little imperfections to be there too, to meet our suffering with kindness, because we are not perfect. The purpose of these heart practices is not to be perfect. It is, in fact, to perfect the love you have for yourself and for others. So now we can practice metta for ourselves and we can practice metta for other people. We can practice for the people that we love and care about. We can even practice for difficult people or evil doers. Maybe it's somebody who you are angry with or somebody that has wronged you in some way. It might even be a person that you hate. Practicing for difficult people in your life will help you soften your relationship and eventually offer a deeper understanding of the way that you relate to them. So metta is the basis for forgiveness. And this is not just for difficult people, this is also for ourselves. One way to think about the importance of metta is to think about the interconnectedness, the web of connectivity of all beings. Even though we are all connected, the world is based on the individual person, which sounds a little bit preposterous, but each individual person has the power to influence those around them. People who have a lot of anger and hatred or negative views about the world can affect or infect others with their negativity, and then it festers and it breeds destruction. You've probably heard the adage that hurt people hurt people. They do, it's true. Even the most angry and violent people are hurting somewhere inside. Maybe they experienced some kind of severe trauma in their life that shaped the way that they interact with the world. Or maybe they were brought up in a culture that's just the norm. As a result, it's pretty evident that these people can't even be nice to others. Therefore, how could they possibly be kind to themselves? Being able to just recognize this quality is a step in the right direction. Being able to see that the way people treat other people is not about the other people. It is about them. On the other side of this, you might have been around somebody that has experienced a tremendous amount of growth, so much so that they've become unrecognizable. Maybe they've transformed from an angry and hateful person to a happy and healed person. So, being around people like this is inspirational and also infectious in the best way. And again, this is another example of our interconnectedness. So, as you grow in love with yourself, you grow in love with this web that connects all beings. And you begin to inspire and uplift those around you. If you inspire just two people to practice loving kindness and compassion for themselves or for other people, then they inspire two more people, and so on and so on. Then we can eventually see hope for humanity. Now, it is usually easier to love others than it is to love ourselves. For some reason, particularly in our Western culture, offering self-love feels wrong. It feels foreign and very strange to a lot of us. And this has to do with our cultural conditioning. There's a really incredible story about the Dalai Lama was visiting the United States and giving a talk at the Mind and Life Institute. This room was full of meditation teachers and neuroscientists. And one of the participants stood up and asked the Dalai Lama about what to do about self-hatred. And the Dalai Lama, although he speaks English, he was a little bit confused and went back and forth with his translator because this concept was very difficult for him to grasp. And his response was, I think that's rare. Then one of the neuroscientists turned and asked the audience, how many people in here have experienced this? And everybody in the audience raised their hands. And the Dalai Lama was shocked. So, why did this surprise him? In short, it's a problem with our culture. And this shows how contagious these attitudes can be. I think in the West, a lot of people tend to view loving kindness as a weakness. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Love is the most powerful and transformative resource we can tap into. And it's always free and it's always there, even if we have trouble accessing it. In the next video, I'm going to talk about barriers to this practice. And then in the following videos, we will do some practice together. Thank you very much and have a good day.